I had a few students ask me about side profiles and interiors, so I'll quickly touch on side profiles and then I'll possibly go into interiors. And before I actually start, if you've got the new versions of Sketchbook, besides your standard brushes and stuff, you can click on this tab here and you can try all these new pens and stuff like that. These are pretty cool for colours. This pen style you've been playing around with is quite nice, actually. You get a nice colour difference between the pressure you apply, which is always good. So I'm going to try this new brush out, I think. Yeah, someone's asked me about tutorials for side profiles in automotive. No surprise. So typically people, well, I don't know why I even do that. I'll use the ellipse tool. Press E on your keyboard, double tap, and go back to a circle. That does that. That makes it ellipse. So I'm just going to scale down some wheels. And then on a new layer, just going to lightly do 3. So as a general rule of thumb, 3 times the wheelbase, 3 times the wheels is generally the wheelbase you should go for, as a general rule. And sorry, I'm moving QuickTime out of the way, which you can't see because it's recording. Anyway, so if that's your wheelbase, I'm just going to move it down into the middle. Again, if you're not watching any videos before, if you hold the V down, you get this wonderful wheel. So you can move, rotate, and even scale. So if I'm doing side profiles normally, I tend to do them freehand. I don't tend to do them like precisely like this, but for the basics of proportions and stuff like that, it's quite handy for you guys to know. And depending on what type of segment of car you're doing, depends on overhangs. So for example, sometimes you get like 2/3 rear, for example, or something, and then so that would be the front of the car. That would be the most furthest away. Say if this is a supercar, for example, you'd normally have almost actually to determine the height as well, you generally do a wheel, 2 wheels high is generally the height of the car, or it is in Audi cases. So if I get a line from there, that would be the highest point of the car. I'm just going to turn that layer down. And if say it's a typical Audi, which is generally you have 2/3 body, which is probably about there, and then the final third is glass. Whatever the shape of the car is. So the proportion between that area and that area and the total height is all worked out traditionally on wheels as a general rule, but that by no means is set in stone. Also from here, if you're doing like a premium car, like a saloon, the A pillar always points to the centre of the first wheel, as a general rule of thumb, which means you kind of get this kind of, before your door starts about here, and you get this distance, which you'll see on premium cars if you look at Mercedes and BMWs and Audis and stuff like that. If you get the shorter this distance here, you'll see it on things like Nissans and Renaults and stuff like that, cheap compared to premium cars. So that's basics of proportions. For example, on this could be anything really, but yeah, say if this is a sedan or saloon, and then you get your whatever your design's trying to do. But that gives you a general overall of proportions, how it works with the wheels. And if I just turn that down, and you're doing it on, say, a supercar, supercars have long front ends and really short rears, and they'll generally have almost that if you look at them in side profile, depending on the type of car you're looking at. And it's very cab forward, so like the actual part where you'll actually sit is within this region here. So again, you still get the 3 as a general. I mean, you can play with this, you can have 3.5 or what, it's entirely up to you. But as a general proportions rule, that's kind of what people go for usually. And you'll see a lot of lines touch the top of the rear, front wheel, but it's quite a distance from here. It kind of gives it a nice stance, so it looks lower at the front than it does at the rear, depending on the type of design you've got. So that's with a supercar. So if you're doing a super mini, you've got really short front end, and you've got obviously wheel sizes differ, but you can see how this applies to most formats. It all depends on your design, but again, 3 wheel wheelbase, and there's a super mini. So it's quite weird, but it's just the way it is. So there's anything. So that's a general rule: 3 wheels as a wheelbase, and then overhangs depends on your design and depends on the format of car you're doing. Where the A-pillar sits depends on whether it's a premium brand or cheap car, and depending on how much cabin space you want in relation to the. So more cabin space means more room inside. But when you get into the car anyway, you'll notice, say if your door ends on a premium car, your footwell's actually down here somewhere anyway, so it's irrelevant. But yeah, so that's proportions on a side profile as a general rule. Now if I was to do, I don't tend to normally do dead-on side profiles, because you see a lot of side profiles, but where people struggle is translating what they've done here into a 3-dimensional 3/4 or rear 3/4 or just an elevated side view. So I tend to not do them dead on. If I was to do them dead on, I'd try and add some depth with the wheels. So I'll never put the centre of the wheel in the actual centre of the wheel. I'll always make my spokes look like they're dished going into it, and there's some kind of perspective going on here. So then you'll have shadow from the wheels on the opposite side of the car. And it tends to make them not look as flat. Side views, they look flat, and they are easy to do because they are flat. They're they're nothing special really. It's good for working out what your design's got to do, but in terms of the final rendering, no, it's just a side view. So I don't tend to normally do side views like that. You'll see, especially if you see my stuff on the internet and stuff like that, you'll see my my side profiles. Generally, I've always started sketching with an ellipse. For your benefit, I'll put some axle lines in, and I'll put a shoulder line in. Let's say if this is a sedan, for example. And this way, doing the way that I do it, you do actually get a bit of what's happening transitional wise with the surfaces that you're intending to do. So as a general, well, for me personally, this is what I do. I don't tend to do dead-ons. So then you can get what's happening going on around this corner, what your headlight's doing around the corner. You can get the top of the bonnet in. You can get front wing splitter if you're a motorsport engineer. You can get the same what's going on around the back, and you can get more still what's going on sculpturally in the side. And I always tend to just suggest there's wheels there, generally, because it's, I don't know, it's the way I do it, it's what I do. I could sit there and do some ellipses, actually I'll do it in a minute anyway, but, and then you can get an idea as to what's going on throughout the roof, throughout the windscreen, throughout the bonnet. And so that's how I would generally go about doing a side profile. And then chucking your winger. And you can also see what's going to happen with the rear windows going into the rear of the car, the rear shoulder. You can see what's going on, and as you can see, that's pretty quick to do that. And then put a bit of a shadow on the ground. So then once you've done one, you can always use it as an underlay to then just rapidly sketch over the top of that. B-pillar, if it's got a B-pillar. So that's how I approach side profiles. If you want to put the ellipses in. You can do them freehand like that. But they're wrong, so just dull that down, and then I use the ellipse tool to do it properly. So if my perspective lines are doing something along here, when you're doing perspective lines, go over your key points like top of the windscreen, back of the windscreen, bottom of the windscreen, axle lines, front of the car, back of the car, and that way you can make sure that the perspective right on the whole car, not just certain views. Yeah, that's about right. So here my wheel should be doing something like that. So this is being the widest part of the ellipse, and that should be the widest part of my ellipse. So if I get my ellipse tool now, make it quite wide, and I always like to use that way, so then I narrow it down that way. So the widest point I always use the rotate tool, and you use these as almost as your crosshairs. So you rotate them until it's about right, and then just pencil it in, and that clearly doesn't look right. So it's not round enough, it's a bit too much of an ellipse. So I'll round it off a bit more, scale it down a little bit. That's better, ish, sort of. Do a few, just see. Yeah, for this case it's about right. It's not bang on, but hey, it's a hard thing to get right. And yeah, so that's a quick walk through anyway, the process. But I'll do one now and then I'll render it quickly. But I won't stick to that sort of, because I don't tend to do that quite. I try to keep it quite loose. So, say if I'm doing a nice little sports car, because they're so much more fun to draw. I've kind of eyeballed that, so I'm going to just see where I sit with that. Yeah, it's not far off. It'll do. I'm going to use, this is from my upcoming book actually, I'll just do it that way so it's got a bit of continuity with the rest of the stuff I've been doing. So if this is the car I've done for my book, I kind of keep the perspective going this way and that way. So then that's going to be the end of the car, so I'm going to have what happens in here. And I've actually got like a weird tail on the end of that. And it goes into the middle and creates a nice air vent in there. Block that out. That out as well. So there's a quick sketch of the side profile. Just going to turn that down, and then I'm going to start whacking some colour on there. I'm just going to use these because these are pretty cool. If you hold B down, you can scale and do opacity depending on the brush. And I'm going to pick. I'll do black and I'll just do what I normally do. And I'm just going to focus on this area. I'm not worrying about it being too precise or neat. But well, the idea generally, even if you do it dead on, it's just they're just quick and easy to do. If you're struggling to decide what you're doing in 3/4, a lot of people struggle to go straight into a 3/4 sketch. They like to sit there, do sub profiles for God knows how many hours. It depends on what you're used to anyway. Everyone's different, so. Let's mark that back a bit. I'm going to do the underbody. Get that nice and dark because it's all in shadow. Just knock all that back. And then try and keep some nice clean strokes. Soften that up. Put some shadow on the bodywork. And because all this is grey, I can use a white and it'll be quite clear, so you can clearly see that. And I'm just going to scale the eraser roughly to the size of the wheel, saves me having to get the ellipse tool out. And I'm just going to erase that. Then just going to get black. And it just shows that the body goes down past the actual crease in the bodywork. And obviously you can spend more time doing yours. I'm just doing it really quickly, just to show you. You can do it neatly and actually put some effort in. Then make the actual side of the glass quite dark. Oops, I've done that the same layer. It's almost a fail. On a new layer. And this is to do a reflection in the glass. I'll just soften that up. And then I'll do the same thing again. And here you do it nice and neat to the bodywork. If you're going to spend a decent amount of time doing it. And then I'm going to get a white. Just to show there's a highlight on the top. It shows the difference between the top and the side because they're different colouring. And then I would literally just get a black dark pencil. I mean, it depends on how much detail you want to go into. If you're just developing designs and forms, I won't go any further than this really until you're doing your final fully worked out. Yeah, and like I say, it's just a nice way of exploring the 3D design of the actual product or car without having to do a 3/4. And it also it's good for good practice for working out what's going on around the side surfaces. Then say if you just want to hint that there's a wing mirror, just do it. And a contrast to whatever your colour rendering is, whether it's obviously this is black and white, so I'll do it white. And then I'll do jet black. I'm just going to move that layer below the white layer. That just indicates there is a shadow cast by the wing mirror. Soften it off a bit. You can start going into detail on your wheels. So I'll just do an airbrush, pitch black in the middle, just gradually fading out to the edge of the wheel. Generally, this is just generally what I do. So like I say, if you're just developing ideas, there's no need to go into extremes on like what the actual wheels look like. Let's put my logo in there. Obviously, if you've got bright lights, want to indicate where they are and what they're doing. So I'll just chuck something in there. Headlights, again, depends on the colour they're rendering. So yeah, just play around with it really. Again, I want to show us a bit more depth going into here because it kind of really disappears. So I want to show that off a bit more. So I'm going to go black and really blacken off down there. So that's how I would do side profile. Then probably lastly just stick a ground shadow in. And bear in mind whatever your design is depends, your ground shadow depends on whatever your design is, so in my case it goes in quite far, comes out. And bear in mind it's the widest point in your car that's casting the shadow on the floor, depending on also where your light source is. So bear that in mind. So it's not literally going to be right to that edge. I assume we've all got foundation in art, so you should all understand what I mean. Let me have to explain, but so yeah, that's actually one more thing. I keep thinking to finish and then I'm actually thinking about something else. I just want to highlight that there because that's an upward facing. Well, it's a change in the surface from here, so it's quite important to distinguish that. And I'm going to just put a bit more contrast in this area here and in here. Now, if you're in uni, I strongly recommend getting into any 3D CAD programs your university teaches you, because you'll notice when you're doing your CAD and you'll notice how highlights fall on a surface that you modelled, and the relation between the white and the dark you'll understand because you've created a 3D surface, so you know what the surface is doing, but it will show you a way of highlighting that surface change and stuff like that. It's really good resource doing your sketches and renderings from a background in 3D. Just the way that light falls on a surface that you modelled really helps. So I'd strongly recommend making an effort in 3D, just for your own understanding of how light falls and shadows and stuff like that, and what effect a surface has on the way the light falls on it. So how you go about rendering that at a later date in the future. It's always a good thing to know. Yeah, so that's side profiles. That's the way I do my side profiles anyway. You'll all develop your own methods. Just have fun with it, really. Cool. Cheers.